Hey guys, Christian the Card Man coming back at you with another deck review today, and this time around we are taking a look at Eldlich. But before we get into that, be sure to hit that like and that subscribe button down below so you guys can stay updated on all my future content. Just show your support for the channel, that would be more than awesome. And while you're down there, you might as well check out all the links down in the description to all the other channels I'm involved in, like Team Chaos Stream and the Coalition of Scrubs. And while you're there, I'll also have links to all the other content creators that are a part of the Coalition of Scrubs. And if you don't know what that channel is yet, it's a Yu-Gi-Oh channel that I'm a part of, where me and several other Yu-Gi-Tubers get together and make you guys some awesome Yu-Gi-Oh content. So I have all their individual channels linked down below so you can all check them out and give them all some love too while you're at it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into today's deck review on Eldlich. So just like I did with Prank Kids, I'm just going to kind of go over some of the what the deck does first, and then we'll get into like the actual stats of the deck. So Eldlich is a very control style deck that has seen a few different combo variants. It originally, when it was first announced, a lot of people thought it was going to be really good in combination with like the Zombie World deck, in which you'd be using your Doom King Ballardrock and your Eldlich to kind of just keep the game in check and control it and bend it to the will of your ways. But a lot of people have not really been playing the Zombie World variant at all. The first variant that we actually really saw a lot of play with was the Train variant. Since Eldlich, the Golden Lord himself, is level 10, it makes it easy to go into rank 10 plays, like your Gustav Max, and then rank that up into a Juggernaut Levy, and go off of that. But that line of play seemed to be a little bit underwhelming for a lot of players, so now we've kind of seen this transition into a combo Eldlich that uses stuff like Jet Synchron and Mecha Phantom Beast Online to go into our Needle Fiber and pull out a Mecha Phantom Beast Auroradon and just get a whole bunch of tokens for Synchro summoning, so we can go into stuff like Portal of Savage Dragon and Herald of the Arclight, and then still have our Eldlich the Golden Boy, or our spells and traps in the back row for extra disruption. So it just became like this really big control style deck that was out there to just output all these different disruptions and then be able to search the disruptions after they used them. So now you kind of have a feel for what the deck does if you weren't already aware of it, if you haven't been paying attention to the meta, and you've kind of been living under a rock. Now you kind of know what Eldlich does, so we'll go ahead and start getting into the review. So just like last time, I'm going to start off with consistency. I gotta give this deck a solid 9 out of 10 for consistency because everything searches. You've got your Eldlixir cards, your Eldlixir of Black Awakening and of White Destiny. Both the Black Awakening will search for your Golden Lord from the deck or special summon it from the hand. White Destiny will special summon him from the hand or graveyard, and the Golden Lord himself can send himself to the graveyard with a spell or trap card, and then he can revive himself by destroying another spell or trap card. So there's a whole lot of means to get him out. I believe Cursed Eldland actually will also allow you to add one Eldlich monster, so you can add your Golden Lord to your hand. I get the feeling, though, with the way that they design these cards, they do plan on having more Eldlich monsters coming out in the future, which honestly already terrifies me with how much this deck is already currently doing. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to get into your Golden Lord. The whole strategy kind of revolves around him and playing with him and interacting with him. So it really makes sense that a lot of these cards want to be able to search him and get into him as easily as possible. So essentially with all this, you've got at least 9 copies of turn 1 access to Eldlich, not to mention your Eldlixir of Scarlet Sanguine, which you can special summon him during your opponent's turn. There's so many different ways to get into your Eldlich, which once again, this whole strategy revolves around him entirely. So given that, also when the spells or traps are in the graveyard, you can banish them. Okay, so you can only use the spell and trap effects, one of them once per turn, which is fine because they do have 2 different effects technically. But when your spells or traps are in the graveyard, you can banish them from the graveyard to set like the opposite type of card from your deck to your field. So it really just allows you to like kind of reset your resources and keep disruptions going so that you can keep damage output, and it makes it so easy to be able to keep disruptions flowing, and it's super consistent to get into everything because they're all like independent cards that synergize really well together. So consistency gets a solid 9 out of 10 from me on this one. The resistance to this deck, I'm going to give probably about an 8 out of 10 because hand traps and disruptions can stop the strategy if they get just the wrong hand. But 9 times out of 10, they're going to be able to have the means to get into their main plays. And once again, since this is a control style deck, it doesn't really need to like focus so much on its combos. As long as it can get its key pieces, like once again the Golden Lord, or at least cards that will allow you to get into the Golden Lord, it's not as big of a deal. But things like, Ash Blossom, they can stop a search. DD Crow is probably the biggest one, because if they can only get access to one Golden Lord and they send it to the graveyard and it just gets DD Crowed, and they don't have the chance to be able to summon it out in time, well, then I mean, yeah, they still got 2 more in the deck to use, but if they can't get them out right away, it can definitely slow down the deck a little bit. Rainbow Neos has actually gotten to resurface because of this deck, because when Rainbow Neos hits the field, afterwards you can activate his effect to mill the top card of your deck to send your opponent's entire graveyard back to their deck, which means that they can no longer banish their resources from the graveyard to get new resources in the field, or they can't use their Eldlich to special summon them back out from the graveyard. So it does really slow down the deck a lot. It doesn't automatically kill it, and 9 times out of 10 it actually does end up being more effective than Abyss Dweller. Which Abyss Dweller does hurt this deck too, because once it detaches a material, for the rest of that turn, your opponent can't activate stuff from their graveyard, so that does shut down most of the Eldlich strategy. But it just really pulls out, or it just really shuts down their resources, so it slows the deck down. And if you can OTK that turn, then you're pretty much golden. But if you're not able to deal enough damage, there's a chance the Eldlich player can still turn things around on you. So do keep that in mind. And the Conquistador can actually stop the Rainbow Neos because it can pop it before it gets the chance to activate its effect. So it's really a give and take. There are cases where Abyss Dweller is more effective. There are cases where Neos is more effective. Just because the Dweller can shut down for the turn, but if the Neos can pop off and actually use its effect, well, then they don't get any of their resources. So really good there. And of course, Eldlich can play around deck lockdown. There are times where it's adding to its hand, but when it's banishing stuff from the graveyard, it's just setting it directly to the field. It's not being special summoned from the deck, and it's not being added to the hand. So it can play around deck lockdown, and Droll and Lockbird, those cards don't really matter to this deck all that much. So not even worried about that. And unless you're playing the Auroradon combo with this deck, you're really not worried about Nibiru. You're not summoning more than 5 times at a turn, once again, unless you're using the Auroradon combo and you're bringing out a bunch of tokens. Now, Token Collector does also hit this deck pretty hard, because you are using like your Mechaphantom Beast O-Lion and the Auroradon special summon out tokens that allow you to be able to Synchro Climb up into your Borreload Savage Dragon and your Herald of the Arclight to get 2 Omni Negates on the field, plus plus like a one-sided Macrocosmos. So once again, the resistance is sitting at about an 8 out of 10. Hand traps and disruptions can slow this deck down, and some cases can put it to a halt, but it's not going to necessarily kill the deck unless you can take advantage of it and be able to close the game right then and there. So moving on now to the power of this deck, I'm going to give it like a 6.5 to a 7 out of 10, because it's really not likely to OTK. This deck plays a much longer grindy style game, and it's once again a control deck, so it's not looking to necessarily close the game right away, but it definitely wants to close it within a couple turns, because once they exhaust their resources, they don't really have much access to cycle everything back. Of course, they do have their Eldorado Adelantado if they really need it, but most Eldlich decks aren't main decking this, so they really kind of just keep it in the side deck, if at all. It's one of those, like, yes, it's good for resetting stuff, or it's a good one of. It's usually a good one of in the main decks, I should say. So it does have some recursion, but for the most part, once it's out of resources, it's out of resources. So it does aim to close the game within a few turns, which is good since Eldlich can make himself a 3,500 body pretty easily, which allows him to beat over a lot of things and deal a decent amount of damage. That, in combination with the Borreload Savage Dragon plays, definitely makes it a lot easier for Eldlich to be able to shut games out, but doesn't usually facilitate OTKs. So it's a good deck, once again, in terms of just like curbing your opponent and stopping them from really playing as much as they want to, while you're just allowed to pop off and be able to smack them for a decent amount. So imagine like Guru, but even harder hitting, pretty much, and more disruptions. So there's that. We'll go into, so for flexibility, you're looking at a 9 out of 10, because once again, all of these cards in this main deck are pretty much, for the most part, independent of each other, but they all synergize really well together. Like, they have their own separate, like, main effect. Like, if you look at Huaquero, I believe that's like a DD Crow for the deck. You can banish a card from the graveyard. Your Conquistador gets you a free pop. Scarlet Sanguine allows you to special summon your Eldlich. Your Eldorado Adelantado, once again, allows you to recycle resources, and your Golden Land Forever is an Omni Negate. So you've got a lot of things that, like, do their own stuff, and they're all disruptions in their own way, but they also have like their secondary effects that allows them to synergize with each other and keep refueling your field with all these different resources and keeping the grind game up. So the flexibility is really easy, because any hand they get, they can easily work with. They're pretty much guaranteed to get some form of disruption in any hand they open and any means to play. Like, Eldlich is one of those decks that can always play with whatever they have. It's not always going to be the best, and usually, like, there are sometimes when people can easily play around it, but no matter what, Eldlich will have some kind of interaction to play with. So Flexibility, easily a 9 out of 10. And disruption, once again, 9 out of 10. Don't need to explain this. Pretty much everything in the deck is disruption, especially now with your new Auroradon combo that gets you 2 Omni Negates on the field, plus whatever back row you have set. So it's really, it's pretty self-explanatory for the deck. So overall, this averages out to about an 8.4 out of 10 on the rating. It's easily a top-tier meta contender that can put out several disruptions and create strong bodies to beat over big monsters. But it can still be disrupted and still, so it can be disrupted, but it can still potentially play through to the disruption. It really depends on what type of disruption it is and when it gets hit. For the most part, though, Eldlich can play through it, and it has a very, very strong game. Eldlich is definitely a very strong game for the meta right now, especially if you're playing online and you don't have to worry about budget. Thank you, Quarantine, for at least that much. So that's all I got for my Eldlich deck review today. You guys let me know what you think down in the description. Once again, if you didn't hear it before, I rated this deck an 8.4 out of 10, definitely on the top tier of meta contention. And now this probably seems a little bit weird given that I gave, I believe, Prank Kids like a 7 out of 10 overall, but the reason for that is because it's different tiers. I usually rate these like relative to their tiers and their status. This is definitely towards the top of tier 1. Prank Kids, I think, is closer to the mid-top-ish of the rogue tier. So if that is any consolation to you guys, I'm not saying that Prank Kids is anywhere near as powerful as Eldlich, just so you know. But that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much again for tuning in. Your support on this channel this early on has been incredible, and I love each and every one of you so much, so please keep up the support. I love all of you, and if you haven't yet, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button down below to show your appreciation for the channel. You guys are amazing. So I hope to see you all in the next video. Remember to have fun and make your move. Peace out.
I'm a